Okay, well, welcome everybody. Hopefully, everyone can hear me all right. We should be live. So, this is where you guys, the audience, get the opportunity to ask questions to representatives from the different companies that are presenting during this event. So, I'll quickly introduce everyone. We have Mark from Brolly, we have John from Microsoft, we have Darren from Okta, Florin from inMailX. And there might be some late arrivals. I'm not sure, but there's a few people missing, so we'll have to see if they come in. But otherwise, it'll just be us. So, to everyone that's on the call, how you guys doing today? So, well, let's get started. So, once again, to anyone watching who wants to ask a question, just put your question in the Q&A tab in the top right-hand menu. Um, and let me know who you're addressing the question to. I've been told I'm a little bit soft, so I apologize for that, but there's not much I can do with this headset. Now, I don't expect for any of the audience, you guys to remember everyone's name, but if you want to say that you have a question, just mention the company you have the question for, and then I'll know who to address it to, as I'll be moderating this conversation. So, with that said, I have some pre-prepared questions. So, I'll start with who do I want to start with? I'll start with you, Mark, from Brolly. So, my first question for you is what makes a social media record different to other types of records?
Thanks, Luke, and I hope everyone can hear me okay out there in virtual conference land. Social media records are different from other types of records around the context of a social media record. So when you're having a normal record, it often has a simple and significant and singular focus. Whereas with a social media record, there's actually additional context and conversations that are behind that one individual record. So for instance, you may have a particular comment, but then other people may be commenting about that or adding additional comments to it, or even adding posts or records to that additional comment or that first record that you've come across. So it's the context that's key and king when it comes to social media records. And therefore, it's important that you're capturing not only that single post or that single record, but the conversations and context that come as part of that record. The other thing too is with social media records, they're live. They don't go away. They may have been posted yesterday or the day before yesterday or even last week, but they're still available for people to comment on. So it's important that you make sure you're capturing them live as they're occurring and you're keeping those conversations going because they could go on for weeks or even months.
Yeah, right, absolutely. And for people, if someone says, we're currently doing screen grabs and recording information like usernames and links and the copy in the post, is that enough or is it not enough?
And it's a common theme that we've come across with organizations that they've taken this approach of just kind of capturing screen grabs of their social media content from either their Facebook feeds or their Instagram or all of those sort of accounts. And the trouble with that is that again, it doesn't give them the context. They can capture that particular post or that particular record, but what happens to the context around that? There may have been something before that led up to that particular post, or there may be something afterwards that's adding to that conversation or to that particular record. So again, it's making sure that context is captured and that context is key. You're also missing out on some of the hidden attributes of social media records. There's a lot more to a social media record than just what you see. There's the metadata behind that, such as any images or videos that may have been added to that post. There's the changes that have gone on, or even the edits to that particular post from the original owner. By doing a simple screenshot and capturing into either an Excel spreadsheet or a continuing Word document, you're not capturing that metadata behind the original post. So it's important that you have to capture that as well.
Sure. Yep, that makes total sense. So I want to throw it to you now, John. So because I think this is a common, query that people have. So what would you say to anyone who might have doubts about whether Microsoft 365 can actually be a compliant records management system?
Oh, that's the $64,000 question. So, look, I'd say firstly, and every vendor probably says this, that in many ways, the system itself can't be compliant. The system has to enable compliance, and it's your overall implementation that has compliance. But just one level down, we do have a very strong program of proving that our technology can either be compliant to a standard or can enable compliance. And we've done that with a number of security standards in M365, and where it's possible to have an independent auditor assess the core capabilities. That's the kind of thing that we're like ISO 27001. We're getting an independent auditor to come in and validate that Microsoft can comply with ISO 27001 in our M365 platform. That's not a record standard, I know that, but what I'm saying is that is a standard that can be independently verified against a set of features, functions, capabilities. And Raylene, I might ask you to kind of pitch in here with a bit of a commentary, but some of those ISO standards, there isn't an independent certifying agency for those ISO standards. We've even seen in Victoria where the Victorian government is no longer certifying systems to be Pro V compliant. So it's really up to the customer to take their needs, their standards, their policies, and then use our system and their policies and procedures to understand if it meets their compliance risk, their security risk, appetite, and their functional requirements. So I believe our systems are capable. Yep. Do they comply to those standards? No, but I think that's kind of a bit of an unfair question because those standards don't have an independent certifying way. You can't, for example, go into New South Wales government, where I work, and go and certify against the New South Wales government records management standard. There is no independent certifying board. It's not like getting a driver's license. So we think that we're capable, but we are actually looking for customers to take up that baton with us and work with us to make sure that it's compliant with what they need. But we feel confident that we have the underlying platform to enable that compliance. But it's really up to customers to do that against their own risk appetite and standards and policies.
All right, awesome. Thanks, John. And we have a few questions coming in actually for you, Brandon. But before we get to Sarah's question, because it's about Content Manager Select, just for anyone that's not as familiar with it. Now, I'm going to put this close to my face because apparently people can't hear me properly, but I understand that after 30 years, Micro Focus recently launched a subscription version of Content Manager for the first time. So why is that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, as you said, Trim was invented, as it was known then, in Canberra just over 30 years ago, and for over 30 years, it's always been a perpetual on-prem license. In the last couple of years, Australian governments have demanded options around subscription services and around cloud-based offerings. So we've enabled both of those now, and so customers now have a choice basically to be on-prem or be in the cloud or be hosted or be in a perpetual license or be with a subscription, depending on what suits them and their policy within their department.
Sure. And Brandon, I mean, hopefully, by the way, can you guys hear me all right now?
Yes,
that's much better.
Okay, awesome. I've just switched to my laptop speakers. So, all right, that's good. So we have a question from Sarah here for you, Brandon. Can Content Manager Select be fully hosted so that on-premise servers or cloud storage is no longer needed by the organization?
Yes, so we have a number of partners that offer cloud-based and hybrid solutions. And customers can do that themselves as well, for example, with AWS or Azure or a number of options. So what would be best, Sarah, is if you want to reach out to me and let me know about your environment and what you're looking to achieve, I'm more than happy to speak with you and also get one of our technical people to speak with you about the different options available.
Awesome. And we have another question actually for you, Brandon. You're in high demand at the moment. So this is a bit of a, this is a good one. This is a bit of a conversation sparker. But Debbie has asked, with the continual development of records management functionality in Microsoft 365, can you elaborate on some of the arguments for retaining or integrating content management?
Well, look, that's a good question. And, you know, a lot of the presenters and companies appearing as part of this summit are partners with us. Miktysh are a partner with us. inMailX, that you saw earlier today, integrate with us. And, you know, Microsoft and SharePoint integrate with us. And in fact, in the next version of Content Manager 10, which is getting released very shortly, there's even more integration around Teams and Microsoft 365. So enable people to work and collaborate the way they want to, but also get that confidence around the records management and governance that we've been providing for 3 decades. I mean, our product was developed in Australia for Australian governments, and as you know, it's used very heavily both by federal, state and local government, but it does not live by itself. It needs to be part of a wider ecosystem, which it is. And as I said, we integrate heavily with Microsoft. We're also customers of Microsoft. I mean, we use Microsoft Teams. I use Outlook and all of those Microsoft products. So no one can operate in a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might
and
bring
I think just to add to
Florin and Darren. Sorry, go ahead, Raylene.
No, I was just going to add to that, and that's sort of really picking up on one of the points in my presentation around complementing systems as well. So it's really about also, you know, you may have the content manager product, but there's still room to complement that with the likes of a Microsoft 365 records management approach as well. So it's sort of removing that silo view of having only a single system and what can we do with all of the tools that are available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to bring Florin into this because Florin, I did watch your presentation earlier. So a question I had is, does inMailX support the option to link Outlook folders to Content Manager containers as well as SharePoint locations?
Yes, it does. So basically, coming back to the previous question, the idea of inMailX was actually to enable users work in their own context. And really, we didn't. So if a user needs to work with SharePoint, they can work with SharePoint and inMailX, or if they work with Content Manager, they work with Content Manager. And we are mindful that not everybody in the organization uses exactly the same systems. And the idea behind it was really to help users transfer information from Outlook into whatever repositories they work with. Now, the concept of the link folder was basically if users already organize emails into their specific folders in Outlook, they can actually link that folder either to a SharePoint location to have those emails automatically transfer or to Content Manager. So it's, and probably this is sort of what we showed in the demonstration was obviously highlighting the integration and the interface that people have when working with those repositories, but quite often people in Outlook, they're just used to the standard Outlook structure, and we wanted to make it easy for them to transfer that information. And they can link a folder to a Teams site, or they can link. So basically, they can actually, if they want to associate the folder in Outlook with the specific collaboration platform that they want to transfer emails into, they can just do that straight from Outlook.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Florin. And Darren, I might bring you in here for a second. So a bit of a high-level question. Can you tell us all a bit, because I know Okta aren't presenting today, they're presenting tomorrow, so can you tell us a bit about how Okta are supporting customers with compliance in their security strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking about information in this vendor talk already. Everyone's spoken about information and bringing information together. Protecting that information is critical, and also enabling users to have access to that information quickly and easily is absolutely critical. So what Okta is about is actually bringing together the users in a very dynamic way, bringing together the context of the user so that we can identify a risk, and when we see a risk, we can manage it by exception. So the users generally have a much better experience because we can use technologies like single sign-on, understand the context of the user. In other words, what device are we coming in on? Where have we signed in from? how often do they sign in? Bringing all this contextual information together so that we can then connect them to the right information. If we rely just on a user ID and a password in this day and age, it's just not enough. So bringing the context of the user into the conversation is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you guys go over this in your presentation tomorrow, but you know, I know Okta support a zero trust security framework. Could you give us a bit of a teaser and tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So zero trust is a fancy way of saying, okay, let's not just rely on the perimeter security, the firewalls, if you like. A lot of what we've talked about is shifting from the on-premise into the cloud. So we want to rely less on the perimeter and focus more on the identity as your perimeter. In other words, if we know more about the user, then we can more confidently enable access, control access to the resources that everyone's providing. And so that would be about, okay, like I said before, about, okay, we now know that the user is logging in from an office network with a device that we have seen before in office hours. So the risk for that is quite low. If somebody connecting to sensitive record information, perhaps managed by Office 365, for example, but the user is connecting on a device we've never seen before from an internet kiosk in Thailand, well, maybe we might want to actually step in and verify that that is who they say they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming much more dynamic, and zero trust is actually about two things. It's about improving your security posture, but more importantly, making it easier for users to connect to the resources that they need.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, Darren. And Florian, I might actually just throw it back to you now. Now, I know, you know, in your presentation, you talked about email management, but, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of their time, particularly, you know, C-level executives. I know we have a number of C-level executives watching this presentation. A lot of people spend a lot of time responding to emails, checking emails. What are some of the ways inMailX can actually increase your user productivity?
As you probably briefly saw in that demo, so one of the, personally, I said I'm sort of directly involved in inMailX, and inMailX really wasn't necessarily about platforms, because obviously users are given a platform, say, okay, work with it. So the idea behind inMailX was really to empower users to have easy to use tools, which basically they work with or they use on a regular basis. Some of the things that obviously, and we try to really put the user in the driver's seat, and we say, you know, like, these are the tools that you actually have available. You decide how to use it, because ultimately we all use different tools in our own ways, and we develop our own routines. So there was the functionality that you showed, which was the cleaning of metadata and on the fly and converting to PDF, renaming, which are very, very popular. And the other aspect was also to improve compliance, was actually to enable prompts to actually prompt users when they send external emails, for example, if they have attachments, to clean metadata on send, or to remind them to convert them to PDF on send, or to help them actually validate. Quite commonly, you know, I think there were some examples in federal government when an email was sent, you know, like I think was the Homeland Security or Border Security that actually send emails to all those people that actually were in the register with being in quarantine, and they actually send it to everybody. So to have this ability to basically validate and confirm that basically whom you're sending the emails are the correct recipients. So inMailX has the ability to actually do recipients checking and also attachments checking, so you can actually validate before you send the email out that yes, you know, the recipients are correct or the attachments actually are correct.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Florian. And John, I might pass on over to you now. Now, what I want to know is, because obviously there's a lot of involvement with machine learning for automated classification. So I want to know, what is Microsoft doing in this space? I understand you have something called trainable classifiers in Microsoft 365. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about that in the context of our Office 365 Advanced Compliance Suite. It certainly comes with the Advanced Compliance Suite. It doesn't come with the basic E1 or E3. Comes with, for those that know Microsoft licensing, but it is a new set of capabilities that leverages AI and machine learning for really tackling this problem where you have sets of content that could really be anywhere. Now remember Office 365, we've got email and calendar, we have email archive. Teams is running on Office 365 where you have chat, video calls, web meetings, channels. So you have a range of communication and information capabilities in a single platform. But in that environment, a piece of information that would be quite common. Let's just choose a resume, for example. That could really come in a variety of channels in your Office 365 platform. It could come in email. It could come in through an attachment to a Teams meeting. It could come in through a channel. And the traditional approach might have been to try and take that content wherever it came from, wherever it is, and then put it in the correct part of the repository. But as information explodes, as users' time gets compressed, especially under this new way of working that we find ourselves in, we have a volume problem. We have a volume problem of how do I find all of that information, all of those needles in the haystack everywhere, and get them back into the right place. So we have a new capability called trainable classifiers, where you can take standard content types that that your information, your organization is being flooded with, but could really kind of come in from any angle and end up in any place in that Office 365 repository, and train up a classifier to recognize those documents, and then to put a retention or a disposal label or some sort of DLP or security label on that content, and potentially move it as well to another place in the repository, but at least correctly label it with a high level of confidence. Now, to get that level of confidence up, you need to train the trainable classifier. You need to give it 200 or 300 documents to initially ingest into the machine learning engine. Microsoft provides a number of trainable classifiers out of the box. For example, we have a trainable classifier that's already pre-trained to detect software code, as one example. But many organizations aren't creating a lot of software code, but they are generating invoices, resumes, certain types of correspondence, which are standard types of correspondence, but may come in or land in anywhere. And you train up the machine to recognize those, to label them, and by choice you can also, but it's your choice, you can also decide to move them within the repository or move them outside of 365 if you wanted to put them into something like a CM9 or an objective or something like that. But the engine is automating and attacking at scale this idea that I've got these standard content types coming into my repository from anywhere and everywhere, and the only way I'm going to be able to handle that is to create an automated factory to process it. Yep.
Awesome. Yep, that's very interesting. Thank you for that, John. And just a reminder to everyone, because I know there's about 100 people listening to this, you can ask questions. I'm happy to keep asking questions, but you can if you want. Just, again, throw it in that Q&A tab in the top right-hand side. I know all our previous sessions had a lot of questions, so encourage you guys to do it. But otherwise, hopefully you benefit. Hopefully I'm asking good questions. So I want to throw it back to you, Mark. So we've seen over the past 9 months, really since the pandemic, we've seen social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook become very much the go-to place for getting medical advice from experts, whether it be national health departments, whether it be organizations like the World Health Organization. So in your perspective, how has social media use among government agencies changed over the past 9 months with the pandemic?
So it's a good question, and it's something hopefully that we're moving out of. I'm in Victoria at the moment, and we're just celebrating the end of some of our stages of lockdown, which is fantastic and a bit of a newfound freedom. But as we've seen, as you've pointed out, Luke, government agencies are communicating with their citizens a lot more on social media. What that means is that those social media records become official records under the regulations and the compliance. So they need to be captured, because those communications that the government departments and organizations are putting out to their citizens now become records of compliance. So it's really important that they're not only capturing their normal records within the course of their business, but their social media interactions as well, because we're seeing those social media interactions increase dramatically, as you mentioned, over the period. And it's really due to the fact that as consumers and citizens now, we're not constrained by the normal hours of businesses that governments and organized businesses normally operate on. We want to be able to communicate with them when we want to be able to communicate with them. It's most of our social media activities are done either early in the morning or early in the evening. They're usually done in the lounge room or in the bedrooms, and it's usually at times that are convenient to us, more so than it is convenient to a government organization and the government department. So we want to consume that information when we want to consume it, hence the increase in social media activity. And as that social media activity increases, then so does the requirements on organizations, and particularly government departments at all levels, federal, state, and local, to ensure that those records are captured so that they can ensure compliance.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Mark. And Heather just put in, loving your questions. Keep going. I'm glad you love my questions, Heather. Thank you very much. I'll do my best. So speaking of the pandemic, Darren, I want to throw back to you. So with the recent pandemic, obviously many organizations have quickly shifted to cloud and remote working solutions. How has this impacted how organizations need to be able to securely provide access to stakeholders regardless of where they're working from or what device they're working on? I'm sorry, can everyone hear Darren? Is it just me? No, sorry, Darren, did you possibly hit the mute on your mic?
Yes.
There we go. I can hear you now.
So we are seeing from the pandemic a massive shift in the way we work, where people have mentioned on the call already that we're receiving information in different ways, through social media, through email, through a whole variety of different channels. The channels are becoming what I would call more porous. There's more ways to get access to the information. Mm-hmm. So we need a way to secure that information with greater confidence. And the way in which our approach to responding to COVID is to make the identity the linchpin. In other words, make it the perimeter. Understanding who you are with a greater degree of confidence means we can give you access to the information you need and the channels you need much more readily. So it goes to the heart of what we call zero trust, that we don't trust the network, if we like. In the old days, you would come to work, you would connect to a network, and we would trust it. Now, the network is something we don't use nearly as much as we used to. We will access information over a variety of different other ways. And what Okta does is bring together all the different ways that you can connect and make it easier to access that information through technologies like single sign-on, federation, so that we're breaking down the silos of those identities, mm-hmm. bringing together users as humans, not as system accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just have a question came in from Lirazel, and I apologize. I'm pretty sure I've just absolutely butchered how to pronounce that name, but I did my best. So I want to, I'll throw this question to a few of you, but I'll start with you, Brandon. Lirazel's question is, do vendors see InPlace management being the future as opposed to single repository?
Yeah, that's a very good and timely question. Interestingly, I find very much in the corporate world, as opposed to the government world, there has been in recent years a strong push for a manage in place. And I'm also seeing increasingly some government departments are now interested in this as well. And I know that because we have responded in the last 2 years by developing our own approach to manage in place. So I think a bit similar to my earlier answer, I don't think there's one answer for everybody. I think it really depends on the policies, the compliance, the governance, that you're supporting and that what you're aiming to do and what your goals are. But I think certainly Manage InPlace will gain popularity within different government agencies and departments. And I think we as a market, as vendors in the market will respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Raylene, I know we are at 12, but we'll just keep running it for a little bit because we still have some more questions. Raylene, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure, Luke. I think I guess I agree with Brandon in terms of, we're certainly seeing, greater increase in interest in in-place management. I definitely talked to that in my presentation. So I do see that as being part of the future for various reasons, but it's notwithstanding the fact that there is that sort of complementary approach to how you manage in-place. I think if we look at it from the point of view of how technology is, growing rapidly. It's growing more rapidly than it ever has before. And that's sort of really around that sort of consumption-based model, which was identified earlier when the standards were being reviewed and technology trends. We were seeing that people are wanting to consume technology based on what they do in their private lives. So I think it's inevitable that there is going to be that bigger increase in in-place management. But I think it also comes back to sort of assessing what the challenges are for your organisation. And also when we talk about that sort of compliance piece where we're always hearing around, compliance and we need to be compliant. I think looking at how we can be compliant in place is really important. But notwithstanding the fact that there could be multiple systems or there still could be, those sort of gold class systems like your content manager that are sort of giving you still that capability to leave the content in place to do that. But I think, looking at that question, in the future versus single repository, I think it's inevitable. I think trying to sort of channel to one single repository for the vast quantities of information that are going to be generated is going to present a number of challenges within agencies trying to manage that in a single repository. But also I think as a profession, there's definitely some room to innovate in terms of the technology's world's moving. Within our organisations, people are using all sorts of different technology. Like if you think about the smart city type approach and the departments within those agencies where people are working on smart city projects, and you think about what they're getting to do within their profession with technology to try and constrain ourselves to a single system or a single piece of technology or a single way of managing is really sort of taking away our opportunity to be innovative and to grow. I think sort of, my core piece would be that we really need to establish the capability to manage in multiple repositories. What those multiple repositories are or how that's done, that still requires a lot of analysis on how we do that. But as a profession, managing in multiple repositories, I think, is a skill set that needs to be established.
Yeah.
And Luke, sorry, if I can just add, in an hour and a half, the presentation this afternoon that Abdullah Noman is giving addresses this exact point about approaching Manage InPlace versus the central repository. So if anyone's interested in that discussion or that area, they should certainly tune in for that part.
Yeah, and Luke, I might just chime in for the second as well. We're not certainly our Microsoft strategy, I believe. Now, I'm an individual contributor in Australia in the field. I don't run the company or run engineering, but I believe our strategy is not to try and convince everybody that we're the new master repository. We have a broad platform, but it's not the all-encompassing platform in the whole data estate within an organization. There will be CRM platforms. There will be databases, there will be ERP systems, there'll be financial systems, and there will be some very specific other line of business systems that we really believe strongly in the in-place records management within our own M365 platform. But we also believe strongly in in-place records management within the other Microsoft platforms, and also working with the non-Microsoft vendors to provide capabilities, in our underlying platform layers that allows them to better manage in-place records in their applications and their systems. I mean, a good example would be would be SAP, who's one of our partners. So yeah, I think the idea of trying to pull everything into one central vortex, I think that's been overcome by events, and it's also been overcome by the explosion of information systems and applications. Going back to Ray Lean's presentation this morning, it's kind of nigh impossible, and also it creates this duplication of records that you ultimately don't want in a records management environment, which would be duplication of record, but also duplication of storage. So I think in-place records management is the only sort of realistic way that we tackle the challenges that we have now in information management. And then, you know, what we're trying to do as well in our platform in M365 is create a broader set of capabilities, and it's been broadening out over the last couple of years, but it certainly is never going to be the only platform that you're using in an environment.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, John. Thank you for that. Now, I know Florin Hamilton had a question, but it looks like you're on top of that. You've already answered that question. So, because that was going to be my next question. But also, Hamilton, you've just asked me, can latecomers still register? Friend said ticket sales had stopped. Yes, let me re-enable that. I will do that on my lunch break. I didn't expect there to be so many new registrants on the day of the event, which is fantastic. We've had a great turnout. So I will re-enable that. So just give me a little bit of time after this to do that. Now, we've gone a little bit over, but I think this has been a really good session. I hope everyone enjoyed my questions. Thank you to everyone that asked questions. Thank you, obviously, to all of our, speakers on here today. And I look forward to, everyone else's presentations. There's still a lot on the rest of, on offer for the rest of today and as well as tomorrow. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We have our lunch break next, and then we come back at, when do we come back at? We come back at, no, sorry, we have our virtual expo and vendor chat next. So that's your opportunity to just browse the virtual expo booths. I know there are a number of prizes and giveaways and special offers that our sponsors and exhibitors are offering on their virtual expo booths. So make sure you check out everyone's booth, see what they have on offer. Then after that, we go on lunch, and then we come back at 1:30, that's Queensland time, for Abdullah from Micro Focus's presentation. So I look forward to chatting with you guys in the virtual booth. I'll be there. Raylene will be there. I think everyone else on this call is going to be there in their respective booths. So thank you very much. And thank you again to everyone on this call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you.
Awesome. See you guys.
Bye.